There's a long list of stuff I've seen, and it's hard to really say which was the worst. And assault is obviously the worst out the gate, but there's a lot of close seconds because of how long the FD up things would last. Forced semi-starvation is one being in lockdown in our cells for weeks or months at a time without being allowed into the commons meant we basically lived as if in solitary confinement, usually got put on lockdown because someone f***ed it up for everyone. But sometimes it was an unwarranted lockdown. It came with a whole host of issues, but lack of food was common. Meals were passed through the doors on trays during lockdown, accidentally forgetting 3/4 of the meal portions on specific trays or forgetting certain cells. Trays completely would mean that an inmate would get just enough food to survive, but would be slowly starved. It was usually just a specific CEO who had a grudge against a specific inmate versus a collaborative effort, but knowing that you're going to not get at least 2 of your meals for the day, and having no alternative way to get out of your cell to procure food for weeks at a time was awful. There was also something we called tile therapy. It was when a CEO would decide that you needed an attitude adjustment and would do a takedown tackle to restrain you, to take you to solitary or your cell, instead of simply cuffing or even verbally escorting you if an inmate fully warranted it. It was not referred to as tile therapy. Tile therapy specifically referred to the hyper-aggressive, completely unnecessary and violent nature of the takedown in proportion to the offense that determined the need for a takedown. It usually involved smashing the inmate's face into the tile during the initial tackle to stun and subdue them, but would also include a variety of battery and such. For example, a CO once broke an inmate's jaw from slamming his head into the tile floor so hard during one such takedown. I don't even remember what the dude supposedly did because it was something so minor, like not having his uniform shirt tucked in, and there was just so much coercion and manipulation and shit in general. CEOs had the power to make your life a living hell if they so desired, and they had a plethora of creative ways to punish you on the books and off. Guy 2 cells down was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer after medical refused to test him for 3 straight months. Basically, if they tested him when he went into medical, it wouldn't have been terminal and they could treat it. Instead, it spread to his lungs and several other vital organs. That's just the start. One night he starts crying out in pain, said his stomach had ruptured and he was in the worst imaginable pain. It took his cellmate several attempts to get a god to listen, and after some of them come up to check on the situation, they took a wheelchair from another inmate and told this guy to get into it. He couldn't move, let alone get up, so they had to hold him into the chair, then call the medical staff and have the inmate try to explain the situation to them. Medical staff said he was lying and ignored the situation. The guards, not sure what to do with a man moaning and crying out in pain non-stop, decided to lock him in one of the common rooms overnight and ignore it. Around 9 p.m. the next morning, they finally drive him off to a hospital to get checkout. His stomach did rupture, and by the time he got into surgery, his insides had gone septic and he died. Edit to add to the story, he started out not being able to digest food and changing his listed faith to Jewish so he might get some food. He could actually digest. He went into medical to try and get checked out, but they said his blood pressure was too high or too low. I don't remember which, and that they would schedule him for another visit. That visit wasn't for another month, and we don't know. We have it until the night before. The same thing happened at that visit and the one after that. When he finally got the diagnosis, he was given the choice of riding it out as is or getting treatment that would extend his life by a few months maybe, but make his life hell. He chose to ride it out until the end. Medical would only give him Tylenol for his pain, which didn't work, and refused to help him with anything unless he got treatment. Seeing him go through all this and essentially get tortured to death by the officers and medical staff is something I will never forget. These people have the power to be some of the worst people on earth, and they certainly abuse it. This new white dude came on the unit. There weren't a lot of white guys there, so he naturally came over. He introduced himself, said he was a barber. Okay, cool. There wasn't any white barbers, so it would be cool to get some discount cuts. I'm only bringing up race so much because it matters later and in there. It wasn't a big deal until it was. I thought the guy was weird. He was oddly quiet and had huge, deep, long scars going up and down his arms, but he cuts hair, so whatever. Couple days go by, and I'm on my way back from church with an old-timer and a young Spanish kid. The kid says they have paperwork on the new dude, and they were going to violate him over it. He's telling me all this, and I'm like, guy, we both happen to be white, but I don't represent that dude. If you have paperwork, show it to the guys and do whatever. I told some of the other guys and left it at that. So later that night, his cellie set him up to be in the cell, and 3 guys, white, Spanish, black. That's how they did it, I guess, to make sure everyone had a say. I honestly don't know. Went in the cell after him. They beat him bad. Really bad. He had a hole in his cheek. You could see his teeth through. The guy said okay when they were done and said he had to go to the hospital. They said no, stay inside because if the cameras show them going in and him coming out, effed up. They'll put it together. Guy says, no, I have to, and really hurt. They think on it and tell him to pretend he got hurt another way. Like playing basketball or falling down the stairs. Guy says, okay, we're almost at check-in time for the night. 5 minutes away. And I see dude come out of the cell. He has all his stuff, like he's going to shower, but has a hand towel draped over his head so you can't see his face. So already I'm on edge, 1, because I knew what happened, and 2, I knew he wasn't showering with 5 minutes left. So I'm on the bottom tier watching him, trying to figure out what he's doing. He gets to the top stair and literally throws himself down the stairs. Now these stairs are all metal, and they connect the first tier of cells to the second above. So 1 story. This guy catches an edge of something because he's going down the stairs, end over end, and his head keeps banging the stairs as he goes down. It was a weird sound. He hit the last few stairs and finished his last rotation and came down head first on the concrete floor with the loudest smack I've heard in my life. Nobody moved. Everyone had an idea of what was going on. So only 1 old guy who didn't interact with us ran over to him and took 1 look and started yelling for the company. The COs initially just sat in their station, and I'm watching blood just pool under this guy. Spreading out. Finally they come check, and instantly everyone is screaming for medical and for us to get back in our cells and lock down. It happened right in front of my cell, and I saw them put him on the backboard. They were trying to cross his hands over his chest to buckle something, but couldn't because they wouldn't stay up. In the aftermath, we learned he died. All 3 guys were pulled out and presumably charged with the beating. Life just went on as normal after. My stepfather was in prison for 8 years in Florida for vehicular manslaughter. He said there was this older guy he knew that had been in there for a few years. Apparently, he was a really nice guy and minding his own business. This guy was released, and he said he didn't see him again until a few months later when he ran into him. He asked why the heck he was back in prison, and the old guy said he didn't know how to really do anything. He said he couldn't get an apartment or a job due to his prison time, and was essentially living on the street since he didn't really have family, so he stole a few things from a store, made a big show of it, then stole a lady's purse on the way out. Then he just sat in the park and waited on the police to show up and arrest him. He literally couldn't function without prison, so he decided to get himself locked back up so he could at least have 3 hots and a cot.